If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
So, have you ever thought about getting some horse photography done or getting some photos, and the photos, you've got someone to take photos, and they've just gone completely wrong? Today we're going to talk to Louise Sedgman, who's a professional photographer, but not only that, she is a horse person and specialises in horses. Before we introduce Louise, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about International Horse College, because International Horse College wants to make sure that you're enrolling in the right course. The right course for you, not just for everyone else, for you, takes into account your previous experience, any qualifications you might already have within the horse industry, and will also consider any RPL or recognition for prior learning. And we've also got to consider your current goals, your current time, your travel restriction. But to talk to a careers advisor, simply book a time to talk to one at internationalhorsecollege.com, or you can call them on 07 for Queensland 3102 5498, and that phone number is also on the website, internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now, Louise, how are you? Welcome to Horse Chats.
Thanks, Glenys. I'm wonderful. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful to be here. And, you know, I've got a book and it's on the International Horse College website. It's called 101 Careers in the Horse Industry. So it's a free downloadable, just get it from there. But one of those careers is a horse photographer or an equine photographer, because you've got to be a horse person who understands horses, and you've got to know about photography to be able to get the photos right. So you're a combination of both. So welcome.
Thank you.
I'll just tell people a little bit more about Louise. She's a passionate horse lover and she's an owner. So we've talked about that. She's had horses most of her life and finds it the greatest privilege and joy to work with horses and their people. And I love the way you talk about horses and their people, because that's really important.
I think it is too.
Tell us a bit, Louise, about how this started, because, you know, you might have had, I don't know, did you have horses early and then go into photography, or were you doing photography and then started with horses? How did the combination come about?
Yeah, I did. I've loved horses forever, even as a wee little person, and my family weren't horsey at all, so I'm not sure where that love come from. It's just innately in me, I think. And yeah, I got my first horse. I was very lucky when I was 5. My mum purchased a horse through my cousins, a pony, and it just grew from there. So crazy horse kid. And then I've never not had horses since in my life in one way or another. Photography came, I was actually drawing horses. So I was struggling to find subject matter that I really loved and was inspired by. So my mum bought my first film camera in my early 20s, which was about 1998, 99, something like that. And yeah, then I had to learn how to use it. So I joined the local camera club, and fast forward to now. Yeah, I was a hobbyist photographer for a long time, and then I became what I consider professional, or heading towards that way, in 2008. I had my first solo exhibition, and then, raised 2 kids since then and ran my business as a mum, basically working from home, but I love it. And the horses, you're right, it's really difficult to photograph horses if you have no understanding of horses, their behaviour, their language, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the two go hand in hand.
You've got an inspirational quote. Tell me what the inspirational quote is, you know, something that you might say to yourself all the time. You can say to others, you might even say to your kids, but how's that affected you? What's your quote, first of all, and then tell us how it's affected you.
Look, it's a really simple little quote, and my quotes often change, the things that I say in my head, but currently it's just believe. So it's believe in yourself mainly. I've been doing a lot of work around self-value and all that sort of stuff. So just believe that you can do it, believe in yourself, believe in your photography journey, believe in your horse riding journey, horse ownership journey, and just a little bit, I guess, of universal faith. You just have to believe sometimes that things are going to work out.
Yeah. Now, you're going to be an educator at Equitana.
I am. I'm very excited about that.
What are you going to speak about?
I'm going to be speaking to everybody about how to photograph their horses, so mainly horse owners, on preparing their horse for sale or wanting to take photos for stud, and maybe they don't have access to a photographer at that time and they need to capture some imagery of their horse. I just want to share with them how to make that as easy as possible for them and some stuff to be mindful about, and hopefully that will help.
So once they've got that imagery, because I've seen some of your photos and they are just gorgeous, but they're touched up or sometimes they've got a bit of a mystical feel about them.
Yep.
If you take photos, do you give people choose which photo you like, but then you do the touch up? What else are you doing? It's more than photography. I call it a bit of magic, but it's more than just photography that you're doing.
Look, sometimes I always try and capture the best I can in camera. I'm not a genius Photoshop user. So usually the light that you see is there in some degree and I just enhance what's already there. I mean, there's always that little bit of creative license, but for my client work, photographing people and their horses, it's mostly what you see, to a degree is already there. And then I will if you understand camera language without getting too techie, when you photograph using a certain camera format, so RAW format, the photos actually come in really dull, really flat, and they have to be edited. You can't share the files without them being edited. So it's about bringing back the photo to what I felt and saw in the moment capturing it. And our human eyes are extraordinarily adapted to be able to see the dynamic range between light and dark and shadow and highlight and all of those things. So I guess what I try and do is just bring the photos up to what I remember seeing and feeling at the time of our capture, when I took it.
So if people are, I'm thinking about times that they would like to take a photo with their horse and make it a bit special.
Yeah.
It could be that they just like to have a photo of a horse to help them with a special occasion like a wedding or something like that. Or they might even have a horse for sale or stallion at stud. Have you got some tips on the best angles, the best places, because there's some pretty awful photos out there of horses, nice horses, but, just taking photos and you just think that horse is so much nicer than that photo.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you can, really undersell a horse based on the quality of the imagery that you take. And it doesn't take much to take a bad photo. You've only got to stand slightly the wrong angle and you can shorten or lengthen a horse's neck one way or the other. You can stand at a different angle and make a hind end look bigger or smaller. And sometimes if you do that in the negative, then it's not flattering to the horse at all, which then makes it harder to sell, harder to promote. You mentioned wedding photography. I think I would have to say if you're thinking of having photos with your horse as part of your wedding, I would do a lot of research into that because that's tricky. I would definitely look at having someone professional do that for you because, the room for error is fairly small when it comes to that kind of thing. But generally speaking, what I'll be talking about at Equitana is just capturing images that will promote your horse to the best of your ability and to flatter the horse as much as possible. Yeah. So I'll be talking about camera angles, lighting, backgrounds, where to stand, what gear to use, a little bit about prep. I don't want to talk too much about prep and things like that because most horse people know what they're doing. Most horse people know how they like their horse to look. This is more about the camera side of it, and it's fairly straightforward, as tech minimal as possible, so it's not too overwhelming, and designed for anyone to do, whether it's with a mobile phone or a SLR camera, whatever you've got.
So say it is with a mobile phone, because people have got just a lot more mobile phones around, I'm sure, than what there are cameras almost, like
Yeah.
you're a professional photographer, you've probably got a few more cameras than mobile phones, but most people have got mobile phones and don't even use cameras anymore because the quality is so much better than it used to be.
It is.
Yeah. What about any tips with a mobile phone?
Look, I think, 75 to 80%, in my opinion, of a good photo is how it's captured, not necessarily what it's captured with. So when you're going to be using your mobile phone, it's really important that, one, you stand in the right spot. So I would suggest if you've got the horse in front of you parallel to you, so you're looking at the side of the horse, you would stand at the shoulder or maybe at the girth. It depends whether you're wanting to enhance, a neck or a bum. And just have your camera, not necessarily at your eye level. If it's a pony, you might need to come down. So come down so that you're sort of aiming, roughly where your knee would sit, and perhaps just a bit in front of the knee, your knee as a rider. So that gives you the best perspective when you're looking at the horse. Now, whether that's with a mobile phone or a camera, it makes no difference. The perspective is the same. And the biggest thing about mobile phones is rather than zooming right out so you can fit the horse in the frame, you're actually better off to zoom in a little bit. So when you squeeze your fingers on the glass of your phone, you actually move it out rather than, bring your fingers together rather than moving out, because you don't want the wide angle lens look. So the wide angle is when you make the image really wide, but you'll get a lot of distortion when you do that. So you're better off to actually zoom in. So pinch your screen, bring them in together, zoom in on the horse, and then move your feet to fit the horse in the frame. So you'll either go closer or stand further back, but you'll be using the telephoto range of the lens in the phone rather than the wide, and it's the telephoto that'll give you the best proportions.
So I've seen lots of photos, and mainly quarter horses, taken from behind. So you see these lovely big hindquarters,
Yep.
and then the horse turning his head around with ears pricked.
Yep.
But I'm curious about the neck, the long and the making it longer and shorter. Is that something to do with standing at the shoulder, standing at the girth?
Yeah, so it can be, yep. And you can also enhance that with the gear that you use. And if you've got an English horse, the number of plats that you use, there's all different tricks of the trade to sort of help you either elongate something or make something look bigger like a behind. So if you've got maybe what you might call a weak behind, I guess if you think about it, the closest thing to the camera is what looks the biggest. So if you step 6 inches towards the girth, you're effectively coming around just ever so slightly. These changes are really subtle, but you are effectively shooting from slightly behind the girth, which then brings the behind rear closer to you. So it makes it look bigger. It's all subtle. You shouldn't be able to tell when you look at it that you're actually shooting 6 inches this side of the girth as opposed to in front of the girth. But all those little tweaks can be enough to enhance a weak behind and certainly make a neck look longer, which is, I guess, what every horse owner wants to do, is make their horse look long and up in the front and all of those things. Yeah. And it's not about trickery. It's just about enhancing your horse's best features and just trying to make them look as flattering as possible.
So for someone who's preparing their horse, you might say, well, I'm coming up tomorrow to get photos of you and your horse. What preparation would you say?
So it depends on the photos that you want, but certainly, physical preparation might be a wash. Again, depending on the time of year, but certainly down here in Victoria, in winter, it's really tricky to wash your horses if they're not clipped. So that can become a bit of an issue, but a good groom. So just no hair clumps. Make sure the coat looks smooth and fairly clean if you can. Everyone understands, you take photos of your horse in winter, they're going to be fluffy, but there's a difference between a dirty, fluffy, muddy looking horse and a clean winter coat that still looks nice, even though it's a winter coat. Brushing out their mane and tail. If you want to give them a trim, depending on the breed and the horse that you're trying to promote, you can give them a little bit of a trim and just tidy them up. Again, if you've got a horse really deep through the jowls and through the neck, you can trim up into there to give it a little bit more of a refined look. But again, some breeds will be, not okay to trim hair under there. So it depends again on the horse. And then I also like to talk about the emotional prep, because it's not just about the physical prep. So making sure that your horses, if you're going to take them out to a location, that your horse travels okay and is comfortable out and about. And if your horse isn't, then you really need to do the hard yards beforehand to make sure that they are comfortable out and about. And also, if you're going, like some people use props when they're photographing, all sorts of things, it's really important that you've used those props with the horse prior to the photo shoot. So the horse is used to things, touching them potentially or moving around them. It's more about just getting your horse mentally prepared for what you're going to ask of it. more than anything.
Okay, now the beach is always popular. You know, photo at the beach looks very romantic. It looks lovely.
Yeah.
What about having horses at the beach? Obviously, they've got to be there beforehand. Are we better off in the water, out of the water, dry sand, sand that the waves have been on? Just tell us a bit about.
Shooting at the beach. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
guess the beach isn't normally a place where you would take photos to promote a horse.
Okay.
But if you're wanting something a bit more romantic, the beach is beautiful. Some things to consider are often you'll need permits depending on what beach you are and where you are. So just do a recce and make sure that it is a beach that's okay to have horses on. You want to do your research and make sure there's ample parking. So you need to be able to turn a float around. You want to have with you a pooper scooper and a bucket to put the manure in. Most councils won't allow manure on the side of the road or anything like that. So be prepared to take, certainly down here in Victoria anyway, and just check if they need a permit. The beaches that the racehorses go to, the racehorses usually don't like other people on their beach in the morning, so you might have to factor that in. If your beach is a beach where the gallopers work or train, then you might want to consider using it at a different time of day to them or checking what permits you need there as well. The other thing is if you've never had your horse to the beach before and it's ocean beach, a lot of horses are terrified of the waves. It can really, really rattle even the quietest horse to see what effectively is the ground moving, coming towards them and then moving away from them. The other thing that they often don't like is the feeling of the sand moving under their feet when the water goes in and out. So you might be able to get them in the water, but that feeling of the sand, you know how when you stand in sand in the water and it disappears from under you? All of those sensations need to be trialled before you do it for the first time for a photo shoot. Because during a photo shoot, particularly if you're the horse owner and you're the photographer, that is very tricky. So I rarely photographed my own horses in that regard. I would get someone else in to do it because I struggle to wear that many hats at the same time. It's very difficult to be a horse owner and the photographer. And if you are going to be the horse owner and the photographer, you need to have somebody who can handle your horse that you trust, 100%, that they can manage whatever your horse might do.
So with the photos that you've taken, and there's quite a few, I've had a look at your website, and that website, just remind us of the website again.
It's louisesedgmanphotography.com.au.
Okay, now that website will be on Louise's version of Horse Chats, so it'll be horsechats.com, and search for Louise, and you'll find that. Now that website will be down the bottom of the page. Have a look at Louise's photographs. They are just gorgeous. Louise, you must have had, probably particularly when you're first starting, some things that people are doing again and again, and you've sort of got to educate them not to do. What sort of things would you educate people to not do?
In terms from a photographic point of view, use leather gear. Don't use grubby halters, fluoro halters that date. Stick with timeless tack is one idea. Make a little bit of effort just to prep your horse, even if it is just a brush. Wipe the mud off, get the grass stains off the legs. The body's usually not too bad, but if they're anything like my horse who just rolls in the mud, you really want to just make sure your horse is a little bit tidy looking. I'm not talking about show quality tidy. I just mean a brush, because I see time and time again horses that are not really groomed all that well. I mean, I keep my expectations very realistic. I have no expectations at all, actually, but every now and then, you'll come across a horse that's still got mud all around its face, and you just think, 2 minutes to brush that off doesn't take much. So, yeah. And definitely where you stand is important to maintain the perspective. That's huge. So if you're photographing mini ponies, you're going to be on your knees on the ground the whole time. I photographed Barrostock one year, the minis at Barrostock. I spent the entire day, like 9 hours on my knees. Tricky. That was a very long time ago. My knees were a lot younger than what they are now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Now, tell us about your first professional shoot. Did someone say, wow, I love what you've done with your photos, and then can you take, photo of my horse, or did you advertise? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, look, it's a bit of a funny story, really. I've always loved horses and working with horses, but I wasn't so keen on people initially. And in my years my early years in the camera club, when I was learning about photography, I did a lot of landscapes and nightscapes and long exposure and all those sorts of things because I really enjoyed all of that. But I was never super keen on portraiture unless it neighed, basically. And so I decided when I was going to I was about 2011, something like that. I decided that I needed some business help. So I had some mentoring with a professional studio owner who ran mentoring for photographers. And he said to me at the end, it cost thousands. And at the end, he said to me, look, Louise, your horse photos are really lovely and all, but you're not going to be a successful business owner unless you put people with your horses and make them beautiful portraits. And I said, I don't like photographing people. And he said, well, get over it. So I remember leaving that day really feeling like, well, that was a waste of time. But I mulled it over, and it took me about 3 months actually. And I decided maybe he has some credibility and he's probably pretty right. Maybe I just need to learn how to photograph people. So I then spent years, I had professional mentoring on how to pose women and how to work with women and how to get the best shape from a woman, no matter what the size, shape, height, anything like that. And then I put the two together. So I'd spent years working with horses and learning body language. And then I spent years learning how to photograph people. I've done a lot of family portraiture, women's portraiture, children, you name it, thousands. So it's been a long learning curve. But I remember vividly him saying, you need to put people with your horses. And I said, I don't like people. And then I remember the very first shoot that I did, it felt really awkward. I did start advertising. I did a probably free half a dozen portfolio shoots just to get some confidence up that I actually knew a bit about what I was doing. The rest of it, I winged a bit. I think you have to when you're first starting with that kind of thing. And then, and every shoot that I do, even now, I learn something. I'll experience light that I haven't seen before or a backdrop. It's a constant journey of learning. I hope it never stops, actually. I don't have a destination. I'm just on the journey. Journey's pretty cool.
Did you start off on another journey, another career, or was it always photography?
Definitely not always photography. When I left high school, I did signwriting, believe it or not. So I was a signwriter for quite a few years. And I was in the transition period where signwriters were going from traditional brushwork and paint over to a more digitized method and the sticker signage and all of that. And I wasn't keen on the sticker signage at the time. I felt like there was an art being lost. So I did some study with a wonderful old carriage liner and did some signwriting with him, and slowly we, left the industry, started house painting for a little while. And then I got work in a local Dulson's hardware store as the paint manager for the paint department, which I was there for 15 years while I learned my photography career. And I left hardware in 2016 to go full-time photography.
So you're doing part-time first?
Yeah. It got to the point where I couldn't do both. I couldn't maintain the client base that I had, like, photographically, and still work in hardware. So it just,
It's always a good move. Sometimes people say they're going to give up their job and start a business, and to me that's too frightening. I think you've got to keep your full-time job, because when you first start a business it's hard and you've got to put the extra hours in. Well, if you're not prepared to work your job and put some extra hours in to start your other part-time stuff, then you're not going to make it in business.
it's really hard. So my hardware job was part-time because I had 2 kids and I only went back part-time when I was raising my girls. And so to the decision, yes, it was terrifying actually. I remember when I handed in my notice, I had a huge amount of feelings and emotions around it all, probably more for the people that I was going to miss and whether I would be able to, again, just believe was a big thing at the time. I just had to believe that I could do it. And, I didn't think about the alternatives. It was just work hard. And I've probably worked stupidly hard. I've got a long story about that, but that's not part of this equitana stuff. So we'll leave that for another day. But, it's the toughest thing I've ever done was have 2 kids and start a whole new career at the same time was tricky. Yeah, like you were saying, Glenys, you're better off to have that part-time gig behind you while you build your business. I'd already started promoting my business years before I actually went, quit my day job and went full-time photography.
And when you were starting doing photography, did you have horse people saying, "Oh, what would you know about photography?" Or people saying, "Well, you're too young to be a professional," or what would you know? Or any other, maybe technology, maybe other things that you had problems with when you were first, and this is money aside because everyone has money problems, challenges and ways you got over it within your photography business.
Yeah, definitely some challenges was a lack of resources and a lack of help. Photography is actually quite an isolating career. Most of us work on our own. There's not a network. There's no one that we can brainstorm with unless we create that network and community around us, which I've done. I had a lot of mentors. I've never been told, there's not been a lot of negative stuff for me. And any negative stuff there was, I chose to ignore because I just believe, I guess.
Yeah.
Certainly never been told by a horse person because most of my clients, 99.9% of the people I work with are not photographers. So they actually trust and rely on me to know what I'm doing to be able to create for them. Yeah, no, I'm very lucky. I've never had any negativity like that. And I guess in terms of hurdles that I've had to overcome, for me, it was more about the business than the photography. As a creative person, business was not my strength. And so photography and the horses I found not easy because it has challenges too, but I aligned with that. So I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the challenges as well. Whereas the business of photography has been hard slog. To build a profitable business and to maintain it is, has been a steep learning curve for me.
Yeah. So, to any other budding photographers that might be doing this part time, might just be taking a couple of photos with their iPhone,
Yep.
and they think, "Oh, I'd like to do this." What would be your advice? Maybe they're getting ready to leave school, and they say, "I'm going to start a business, horse photography."
Yeah.
What would your advice be?
If it's horse photography related and they've not had a lifetime or years around horses, I would say spend as much time around horses as you can. There's not a lot of things that we as humans spend a lot of time with that can kill you as quickly as a horse can. I know that's really dramatic, and I never like using those words, but I do find a lot of enthusiast photographers that have never been around horses are a little blasé, ignorant maybe, around just how dangerous things can go badly or how quickly things can go badly when you work with horses. And it's more about avoiding a situation than it is about managing a situation once it's happened. I'm always looking at avoidance. If I can avoid having something bad happen, if I can foresee something, and I've had bad things happen during shoots, so I know just how quickly stuff can go pear-shaped. But my advice for someone coming out of school is, believe in yourself. It takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something, so be prepared to do the hard yards. It's not going to happen overnight. 10,000 hours to be a photographer in whatever given genre you want to work in, and it's going to take you that long. It takes time to become a master, but it's very rewarding along the way. Take the time to learn business stuff. So if you're in high school now and you've got an opportunity to learn business, then I would be learning about the business, because it's all well and good taking a beautiful photo, but it's hard to make a business out of it if you can't sell it. So, yeah.
What if they are a horse person and they've been taking some photos? Any extra training or any extra things that they should be doing to improve their photography?
Yeah. There's actually, I don't know of many, if any, places within Australia that you can go and learn equine photography that is accredited and a course designed for that. There's lots of other you can do a bachelor and a master's in photography and fine art photography and all those things, but nothing that I'm aware that does equine photography. So I would suggest find yourself some equine photographers that you align with, that you love their work, and talk to them and come and do, there's a few that do workshops within Australia, but not a lot. Go and do some workshops with people that you aspire to. I know there's some in Queensland, New South Wales. There's one or two. I'm in Victoria. I don't know a lot of others that teach workshops with horses specifically. In Victoria, we are sort of a small community, but align yourself with those people so you can learn.
Is there anything else that we need to talk about before we finish? Anything that, you would like to tell people before Equitana, or something, still equine photography and thinking equine photography? What else is there that you'd like to let our listeners know?
Yeah, look, the whole inspiration behind what I'm doing at Equitana is just, and to be honest, the first thing I'm going to ask at Equitana is who's ever bought a horse or sold a horse. Because if you've ever bought or sold a horse, you would know how important quality imagery is. And it only takes mindfulness to create that imagery. If you don't have the budget or the means in terms of having someone nearby to actually have professional photography done, then the next best thing is to just do the best you can with your own photos and your own phone or camera. And I think this conversation that we're going to have at Equitana is going to really help you with that.
Okay, great. Well, for people who'd like to contact you now, we're going to have those contact details on horsechats.com. Tell us what the best way is that people would like to contact you.
Yeah, look, via email, Louise at louisesedgmanphotography.com.au is fine. If you jump on the website, Louise Sedgman Photography, it will guide you through. You can reach me there via the contact pages. My phone number is everywhere. Literally, as soon as you go on the website, my little phone icon will pop up. You can give me a call anytime. I'm very available. Reach out anytime.
All right, Louise, thank you. Thank you for chatting to us. And I think this is a chat that all horse people would be interested in, because taking lovely photos of horses, you might want to take them all the time, every day, because it's just something that you want to do. And I think even for the tips, the first tip would be, if it's something special, get a professional photographer. But the other thing is, if not, and you just want to take extra photos, there's still tips in there to say, I want to take better photos. So thank you for coming
Absolutely.
on Horse Chats. Yep, we've loved having you.
Thank you so much, Glenys. It's been great to chat, and I cannot wait to see everybody at Equitana. Bring it on.
Okay then, bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.